The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're here with Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh, and I'm very excited because it's Wednesday. Good morning. It's so good to see you. So thrilled. It's so, a lot goes on in the morning and, but I'm always, I gotta say that when I love our theme song, and whenever I hear our theme song, it reminds me that I get to be grateful for the next hour that I get to be with all of you. And on Wednesdays, I get to be with Dr. Granpeesheh. So whenever possible. And so that's a good thing. And it's important to stay grateful for the things you can, because heaven knows there's other stuff to look at, right? So thrilled to be here this morning with all of you live. We're going to be live for the next hour. I know sometimes you guys write in and go, are you really live? Yes, today is August 12th. It is Wednesday morning. We are really live and we're looking for your live comments and questions and concerns. You can be writing in right now on Facebook and YouTube. Those are the best two places right now to get questions to us. We are still able to take questions on the live feature on our homepage, which is autism-live.com, but some of them are struggling to get through. So I encourage you to go to Facebook and YouTube to get your questions in today. Also want to let you know you can be watching us on Periscope and on Twitter. And later on, you can be watching us on iTunes or listening on iTunes, Spotify, Deezer, or iHeartRadio. We have a couple of new places that are coming up in the coming months that are very exciting. And if there's a place that you watch your podcast and you're like, Shannon, you are not there, it's only because you have not told me. So write in and tell us. Want to remind you too, you can always write me at s.penrod@autism-live.com. Many of you have been writing in and saying, hey, how do I get on this show? You write to me and you pitch me a story idea of something that you would like to be on and give me at least 3 to 5 talking points of what you want to talk about. We're thrilled to have you on the show. We just want to know what it is that you want to talk about. And then I will be back in touch with you. Be patient with me because there's a lot going on. And those take me longer to go through than anything else. Hey, Bonnie, we're saying hello to Bonnie and to Amanda. Thank you for joining us and getting right on the chat. Hi, Parker. Parker, we're so glad to have. And Parker says, good afternoon, Shannon and Doc. So I always say that I'm feeling like 6 or 7 of the dwarves. So you can be the Snow White 7 dwarves. So you can be Doc and I'll be all the other ones. Sneezy, sleepy, grumpy, all of those. And hi, Michael. So thrilled that you are here with us. I'm excited to have you here. So Dr. Granpeesheh is an amazing expert in the field of autism. I believe the expert in the field of autism in our time. She has been working in this field for 40 years. No one would believe it. We all want to know what her skincare regimen is. But she's been helping individuals on the spectrum from very young babies up through senior citizens. So she donates her time to be with us on these Wednesdays to answer your questions. We have to give you the disclaimer that no expert in this field could give individuals specific advice. That would be a disservice to the individual, right? So we hope if you're writing in about yourself or about someone you love that you will be as specific as possible with, first tell us where in the world you are, like the closest major city is all we really need. Because the resources are different. Can't wait to be able to say that that isn't the case, but that is the case. And let Dr. Granpeesheh know exactly what's going on, and she will give you information about what she knows so that you can go back to the experts in your area and get more help and more support. Is that about accurate, Dr.
That
Granpeesheh?
sounds great. Yeah, that sounds perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so thrilled that you are here. I always forget to say that Dr. Granpeesheh is the founder of the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. She is also the founder of the wonderful charity Autism Care Today that gives out grants to families for the things that they need. Wonderful, wonderful organizations. I'm very fond of saying all good things point back to Dr. Granpeesheh.
No, that's so
So,
nice. And
so
I do want to tell our viewers that ACT is pretty, I'm very active right now at ACT. We are giving away, we still have some iPads to give away, and we have been giving away throughout the COVID period. We've been giving away just grocery cards. So money for groceries. So please feel free to, if you go on the ACT website, there's an email and you just shoot us an email. We're not asking for documentation. We're just trying to help people out right now.
wow, so amazing. I said all good things point back to Dr. Granpeesheh. Okay, so we are encouraging you guys to write in your questions right now on Facebook and on YouTube. There was a little bit of a delay in us getting them, so write in early. Don't wait till the end of the hour, but we had some people write in some questions ahead of time. Really excited. Dear Autism Live, I'm writing from Ireland. My 4-year-old child is being assessed for autism and has some words like mommy, go, hello, me. He calls himself a name that is semi-related to his name. I don't want to say the name. He says bubble. He said bubbles in his first session last week, and he sings happy birthday to himself and jingle bells. He also loves to say happy birthday. What can I do to improve his speech? And is my child considered verbal or nonverbal? The clinical psychologist said that he also has words hidden under his tongue in the form of echolalia. We said to him when we met the pediatrician that you were going to meet the doctor. He actually said the word doctor, but just once. In fact, this happens often. He says a word and it disappears. I went on to speak further with this dad last night, and he's got a lot of questions about behaviors. There's some aggressive behaviors. He's hitting them. And there's at least one person who's recommending Ritalin, and the child is 4. So what can we put in this dad's back pocket to help him?
Yeah, so, Shannon, as you were reading that the child has a handful of single words and sounds like also likes to sing and has echolalia, it made me very, I don't know what the word is, kind of nostalgic. I missed working with kids like that. Let's put it that way. This is the type of child where you have a very high possibility of the best outcome because he's 4 years old and he is saying words, and he's also trying to use those words in a social way by singing, and he is echolalic. Echolalia is a good thing. So I would not try any medication right now. I'm sure he has some challenging behaviors because it's pretty common for our kids to develop challenging behaviors because they are not really able to communicate fully. So as a result, they show challenging behaviors. It's a natural thing. If you cannot get your needs met, if you want an object but you don't know how to tell people that you want it, you're gonna grab and hit and so on. If you don't want to do something you've been told you have to do, you're gonna try to run away. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that goes on, and it's just communication, really. So I would highly, highly, highly recommend for this family to do an intensive behavioral intervention program, an intensive ABA program immediately, because he's 4 and you really want to get this started ASAP while you have time, so that you can start teaching him everything he needs to know. Now, I think you said they're in Ireland, Shannon. Is that
Yes,
right? Yeah.
yes.
So if I were you tomorrow, I would get on the IBT website, which is the Institute for Behavioral Training. And the website is ibehavioraltraining.com. I would get on there and I would really dedicate a week to educating myself on the various modules, starting with just, understanding a little bit more about autism, about ABA, and then starting to really learn about the teaching techniques that we use, and also the techniques that we use to reduce challenging behaviors. There's two separate techniques. The techniques for challenging behaviors are completely different than the protocols for teaching. They're all based on the same premise of using reinforcers to increase behavior, but they're different techniques. So it's important to get trained first, to learn those techniques. Once you've learned some of those techniques, I would then get on skills. You could do this simultaneously, actually, as you're taking classes on IBT. I would then go on skills. And when you go on skill, and the skills is www.skillsforautism.com. And you go on there, and the first thing you do is you answer a series of questions about your child. And those questions will then help identify all the different areas where your child is lacking skill. So it will. There's another section, by the way, of skills that will help you deal with the challenging behaviors. That's also called the CIFA and the Behavior Intervention Builder, Plan Builder, BIP Builder. You should really take advantage of all these things that we've designed over the years and put online, because they will truly guide you. If you use IBT to learn the techniques, and you use skills to learn the content of what your child needs, the specific lessons, the two together are really all you need. Honestly, it takes a little while because skills is written in a kind of a really technical way. So it might take, please don't give up. It might take a little while to understand kind of what it's all about. But it would be really important to do that, because your child has a really good chance of learning how to communicate, learning how to do a million things. Think of ABA as a foreign language. Think of it as a new language that you're teaching your child. And then as soon as they learn the language, then you just fill them with all the content that they've missed. It's sort of like intensive tutoring in a foreign language. Look at it that way.
Love that. I want to say, because you brought up IBT, every week they send me an update, the Institute for Behavioral Training. And so I want to update everybody. Right now, if you go to ibehavioraltraining.com, there's some things that they're offering. So they're saying, as children return to school this fall, we would like to offer our ABA parents and guardians parent school readiness skills from our free IBT parent e-learning course library. For the educator community, we will continue offering educator useful strategies available to them at no charge. We will continue our free RBT 2.0 trainings for our parent audience on a case-by-case basis. In addition, we will continue to offer 10% discount on all skills products. You just have to say that you're referred by me. You can say, I watched on Autism Live. You can say, Shannon said to say the friends and family, whatever, it all works. The phone number to call to get any of those things is 877-975-4559. And just to make clear, there's a lot of different modules that they're videos with great experts that you can watch. As you heard me say, a lot of them are free right now. The RBT training, that's the Registered Behavior Technician. I know many of you have already taken us up on this and said, I want to get that training. I want to get the same training that a beginning therapist would get. Now it's just the online portion of the training. It doesn't get you the RBT designation. You have to do more stuff to get that, but it's the beginning training. Do it all online. That's like a $440 value. And On a case-by-case basis, they are giving it to motivated parents. So if you feel like I need to know more than I know today, take advantage of that and call them. And again, I just put it away, but the phone number is 877-975-4559. 877-975-4559. Okay. And I have been using WhatsApp to do international phone calls, and it's just like such a cool thing. If you need to make a
And
phone call.
you know, Shannon, last night, it's funny that this is our first question today, and we're referring people to IBT and skills. So as some of our parents or viewers might not know, on Mondays, Shannon and I do a kind of orientation for some of the families who have entered card. Today, also at 4 o'clock on Wednesdays, we do another orientation for families. And so I was, as you and I had spoken, Shannon, I was looking over some of the requests that families had were for us to go through lessons on skills. So as I endeavored to do that, despite all of my lovely technical issues that I've had over the last 2 days, I realized that as this might be the time in my life where I have enough time to take some of the information in skills and IBT, both of which are pretty amazing, but particularly with skills, I always felt that the information is written in a very technical manner, and it might be difficult for a lot of families. And then plus, of course, there are families who are most families do have access to online, but some families don't. So I was thinking that this might be the time where I start to go in and actually write a series of kind of very non-technical use language books about these different areas that we teach, and kind of like, you know, how do I increase social skills or social conversation, or how do I teach perspective taking, or all these different things. So that's one of the things I think I might start doing, although it'll probably take me a long time to do, because as you know, skills is very rich in content. But I think that we get so many questions from all over the world. And I feel like sometimes parents get on these like skills in particular, and then after a while they give up because it's too hard unless you have the technical language, you know? So what do you think about that?
I think that's amazing, and I have something to share with you that I think might be a fun companion piece for you. Because when I was having to learn skills as a parent, one of my assignments was to write a script for each curricula area and what as a parent it was going to teach. And I have all of it, so I can send
So
them.
that means you and I could do this together, which would even be more fun.
That sounds very exciting to me. That's very thrilling. And what could be better than that? Because there's so much in skills. I've always said I'm skills' biggest fan. Partially because I was there at the beginning and was one of the first people to see it and
Right.
lost my mind. Every once in a while on my Facebook feed, it comes up the reminder of that day, because what I posted on Facebook was, I have seen the future and I'm so excited I'm shaking. And it was because you had shown skills to a room full of us. And I left the card off. That was the first time I met you. And I left the office and I couldn't get further than the little Ross that was right next door to the old.
Oh, sure.
Because I couldn't drive. I was so emotional and I was shaking, and I called my
Wow.
husband and I said, honey, you won't believe. And I went in to the Ross and I bought a ginormous clock because it
Oh,
was going
wow.
to remind me of that moment. And that clock sits over our mantle because I was like, I need to commemorate this moment. And I knew it was about time, and that it was going to buy us all time, that it was going to buy our kids time, and that it was the future. It was a huge moment for me. And then, of course, that led to a lot of other things, which ultimately led to us doing this show, because I was so excited about it. I was so excited about it. I was over the moon. I'm still that excited about skills. and what it can do for families and supporting. See, I'm emotional. I'm verklempt.
Oh, I love you.
Anyway,
Thank you.
so check it out. And I suppose I should read that phone number again now that I've gotten all emotional. 877-975-4559. I'm just going to say, you guys, with all the things happening with schools, we need to lean in as much as we can, learn what we can, do what we can. You know, and that's what it's all about. Okay, we got a lot of questions coming in. I want to get to this one. My son is 18 and his senior year has a senior year to complete. That's my son too. He has always been a sweet young man. However, within the last year and a half, we got a dog and he has become very aggressive, and I've exhausted all resources. I'm so emotionally and physically spent. I'm between a rock and a hard place. I love him to pieces and don't know where to go. Help. They live in the Daytona, Florida area. I did talk to mom a little bit more to try to get a couple more answers. And I don't know if she was able to join us here because I was encouraging her to do that. Because I was asking, you know, that, okay, it seems like it's somehow related to the dog, but is there anything else that changed? Is there, or is there anything that happened specifically with the dog? But I have not gotten an answer about that. So what would you like to say, Dr. Granpeesheh?
I would want to know more specifics about the interactions with the dog, because it could be that he's jealous of the attention being given to the dog. It could also be that he's just frustrated because the dog can't do certain things. I don't know. So I'd love to learn more about the things you see and how his anger or frustration is evident. And also kind of like just to learn a little bit more about the topography of the behavior and what is he actually doing to express his anger.
Okay. And I just want to put it out there. A lot of times as parents, we go, I don't know, it's just Tuesday and it randomly happened. Sometimes we assign value to the thing that seems like it's there. I always tell the story about my son. We used to go into one store, everything was fine. And then he started throwing tantrums at the same place in the store every single time. And our team asked us every question and they're like, what's happening right before, what's happening afterwards? I thought it was because of the squid. He wanted to go and look at the squid in the case, and it was right after we would see the squid. I assigned that value to it, and I was sure that that was it. They came and looked at the store, and you know what it was? The floor changed from a smooth floor right there to a tile floor, and his visual thing made him feel like he was going to fall through, so he would throw a tantrum. Sometimes you got to have other eyes on the situation, you guys, but it's never random, not ever. Am I wrong, Dr. Granpeesheh? Like there's
absolutely right. There's always something. That's right. That's right.
Okay, so somebody said, this is so awesome. Thank you. I'm so glad that you're here with us. What are the signs that will make you believe or think that a kiddo will reach a high functioning level? Because you were saying about the first question, this is a kiddo who is in that range that, could make the most progress. So they want to know, what are the signs that make you believe or think a kiddo will reach that high function level?
Right. There's different signs, I think, at different ages for me. So if I'm looking at a, let's say, 2-year-old, then at the 2-year level, the only things that are really like significant positive signs would be things like responding to his name or pointing to objects that the child wants, or having joint attention. Joint attention is kind of the ability to, let's say, look at you and then track what you're looking at. So that's an indication of the beginning, the development of theory of mind, perspective taking, which I think is huge in autism. So that's like a 2-year-old. 3-year-old level, I'm looking at the beginning of some sort of language, speech, echolalia. A lot of times it just at 5, I'm looking more at the development of theory of mind, perspective taking. There's different things at different ages, but mainly I think it has a lot to do with being connected enough to the environment and to people not just the environment, because sometimes our kids are very connected to sort of stereotypical repetitive behaviors that they do in the environment, but they're not connected to people. So being connected to people is, I think, a very important sign. It's very, very helpful, and it does help us do a lot of other things. Now, having said that, there are kids who have other skills that usually tend to help them learn faster. For example, hyperlexic kids. So kids who are able to do really well with letters for some reason. Nobody knows really why, but there are some children who the area of their brain has developed so significantly that they teach themselves how to read at the age of 2, at the age of 3. Those children tend to do very well with ABA because we can use written words to prompt them to learn everything else. So it's kind of like it just goes faster because we have the ability to use the written word. But there's all kinds of different things. And I want to let the viewers know, I've had kids where uh, we were teaching them something. We were trying very hard to teach them in intensive programs, and things were not looking well. And we were constantly getting together and trying to figure out what is going on. Why are we hit a plateau? Why are we not moving forward? And then we would all of a sudden realize, oh, this child has very little ability to receive information auditorily. And as soon as we make the information visual and start using visual prompting, so things like letters or pictures, etc., then the child's learning just shoots up. There are cases when I have children where their learning phase is slow, and we realize that they have significant allergies. And we go ahead and fix their allergies or get their allergies under control, and then their learning speeds up. I've had that experience with kids who have high levels of yeast. And as soon as we put them on any kind of antifungal medication, they wake up and just start soaking in. My very first case at CARD, after I left UCLA, Shannon, and I always talk about how I've learned more from my patients, from my kids, than from anything I ever studied. And my very first case after I left, I was at UCLA doing ABA from 1978 to 1990. And then I opened CARD in 1990. And several of the patients that I was treating at the clinic there at UCLA, it was called the Clinic for the Behavioral Treatment of Children, a few of those patients came with me. And one of those patients was, I guess, my first recovery at CARD. We had recovered kids at UCLA before, but at CARD. And that young man, he was learning, he was very intelligent, but it was slow. And it's important that learning speed up as much as possible. So we try to do everything around the ABA. So we try to make sure the child is medically healthy, is sleeping well, is paying attention, all of that, so they learn faster, right? And so that young man, at that time, he was a little guy. It was like 2 when he switched over. I think he would have been like maybe 3 or 4. We discovered that he had celiac. And celiac is the complete inability to digest gluten, right? And this is the viewers should know nowadays it's very common for people to have gluten, casein, soy, corn reactions or allergies. But in those days, nobody had even heard about this. We're talking 1990. And this father was a spectacular individual who just wouldn't let go. And he took his son everywhere. And we were very fortunate to find a physician in Sweden, actually. And this was his area, how the food impacts brain functioning. And so we brought him back. We put him on a full gluten-free diet, which was very hard in those days. And let me tell you, his rate of learning went just skyrocketed, right? He just started learning like crazy. And of course, maybe 2 years, 1 year later, he fully recovered. I have another child who her learning what she had fungus on her nails. And I found a local pediatrician who would treat the fungus on her nails with just a topical antifungal. And the change in her attention was so significant when we started putting fungus on her nails that I realized she needs antifungal medication. And of course, with her, the same thing. So, it's hard to say. I don't like to use the words high functioning or low functioning because kids change with what's going on around them. Just think about yourselves, right? One day you wake up and you've slept really well, and you're very, you've stayed on your diet and taken all your meds and whatever it is, and you're at your best, and you can take in and produce and learn 5 times more than a day where you haven't slept, or a day after you come home with a reaction to some food you ate. I mean, apply the same principles to yourselves, and it just makes a lot of sense, right? So the functioning level of our kids changes based on a lot of the environmental stuff that's going on with them. That's kind of a long answer.
But we love it. And I got to say
Mhm.
too, and add in context to that, I have a friend who says, if you want to make a spreadsheet about a business, my kid is not the kid. He's not, you're
Right.
going to say that he's low functioning. But if you go on the side of the mountain and unpack the gear to figure out how to get to the top of the mountain, my kid's going to be the most high functioning person on the side of that mountain. So context, right? So anyway, we got so many questions, Dr. Granpeesheh. Everybody's hyped and everybody's writing in how much they're loving this. Okay, so somebody says, today is my kid's ABA evaluations and I'm so excited but nervous. Age 3.5. We've been on a waiting list for almost 2 years. I'm sending you a hug, but thank you for slogging it out and keep it going. I'm not experienced in ABA. What is your thoughts for my son 5, so ages 3 through 5. So I think he's 5 now. They've been waiting for 2 years. My son is 5. Verbal functions well. What are your thoughts for my son? Verbal functions well in the right environment and supports. 2 days ABA, 3 days remote learning through public school, ? I fear remote learning is not going to do anything for social development. Okay.
Okay, that's a great question.
Yes.
So if it was me, and I can't tell our viewers to forget about distance learning. I can just tell you what I would do. If it was my child, I would do every single day ABA. Every single day, I would do ABA all of his waking hours. Because ABA is, like I said, it's a language. Think of it as a language. And I always, when a child is young, when they're 3 or 3.5 or even 4, you have the luxury of selecting the things you want to teach them. So you have language, which is very important, and you have adaptive self-help skills, which are important, and you have social skills, play. All of these things are super important, right? And so you can focus on the things that are important for the child, and you can focus on teaching the child that the challenging behaviors that have been developed are not appropriate, and you can replace them with all these functional adaptive behaviors. When the child starts to become 5, 6, 7, now we have an added pressure, which is academic skills. And we then have to worry about, how am I going to fit in also teaching him letters and numbers and counting and adding and reading and all this other stuff, right? And the history and whatever else, like everything that comes with school. So your time then starts to be not enough. And so what I would do, if it was my child, I would prioritize and say, what are the actual core skills that are more important to the functioning of my child, assuming that I can choose. And if I could choose, I would always choose to teach my child language before math. It's just that simple. I would always choose to teach my child how to communicate their needs, how to socialize perhaps before they could, do algebra. So however, maybe it's really important for my child to learn how to read. So there's different areas of academics and real life, and you kind of have to take the lessons, we call them prerequisites, take the lessons or the areas that are the most important and select those, and work on those first. Now, with a child who's between 3 and 5, you're still younger. You're still at that age where intensive ABA works, and you can get funding for it. So I would really, really try to push as much intensive ABA as possible, and do very little distance learning, very little educational stuff. In fact, there are countries in the world where school doesn't even start till 7. So, take a year or two. Doesn't matter if he's a little bit older in first grade. It's important that he has language skills and attention and the ability to socialize and communicate with his peers. It's with everyone in the world. That's very, very important. So I would really focus on doing that. And also, let me tell you, I would do face-to-face ABA. I know it's very scary right now with COVID. And unless there's a scenario where you are, you have someone who has immunodeficiency in the home, or your child is ill in some other way, I would really try to do face-to-face. There's much, much more value to face-to-face therapy, ABA therapy, than there is to telehealth.
Okay. And so amazing. And, we keep saying on the show that this has been devastating in so many different ways, but in some areas, it's buying people time to do things that they couldn't otherwise do. With your child being 5 at this point in time and school being what it is this year, I think you're going to get a lot less guff from the school district if you want to focus on ABA. It's like it bought you a year. Take advantage of it. Take advantage of it. You'll never be sorry.
And can I also just add one other thing? A lot of parents are often worried because they think that if they do a lot of ABA, they're taking away from the child's social life or the child's ability to just relax. And I want to just tell you not to worry about that, because first of all, ABA becomes a very positive social experience for your child. Like, they establish a really positive relationship with all the folks around them, including you. It will improve your relationship with your child as well. And they become friends with the therapist and with other kids and so on. So I wouldn't worry about that aspect. And when we talk about kids like, oh, my child needs time to just do nothing and to just watch TV, again, I would really suggest that you take every moment of your child's awake hours and use them in some beneficial way, because it's only for a few years. And think of kids who learn, let's say, to play the violin, or to speak 4 languages or whatever. They don't have a lot of free time. They constantly are doing other things, and think of ABA as intensive tutoring to catch them up to very, very vital and important skills.
There you go. I want to get to this next question because just sending love to this parent. We're in Tucson, Arizona, and I'm adopting a 13-year-old boy on the spectrum. Okay, wow. You are my hero. But they say I'm having a hard time with his school giving him a self-contained class due to his severe antisocial behavior. And any ideas about what I can do to light the fire? I just want to say, if you will email me, s.penrod@autism-live.com. I happen to be friends, have a good friendship acquaintanceship with 2 of the top educators in Arizona, in the state of Arizona. I will hook you up with them and they will tell you what you need to say and you'll be well on your way. How's that? Anything you want to add, Dr. Granpeesheh?
That's awesome. I would just really suggest that you try to get a BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst, to help you identify a little bit more detail about what antisocial means. I I could be antisocial sometimes. We all are. The question really is why. It brings to mind another child that I had uh, many years ago, and he was a real sweetheart. So we could never really understand why he reacted so harshly in the school environment. And believe it or not, we found out that it was because of the buzzer that goes off in between classes. I mean, talk about, you were talking about Jem earlier, Shannon, with the floor
Yeah.
pattern. There's things in it that we don't pay attention to. And this child had developed such a significant fear because that sound was so harsh for him, and he knew it's going to happen every hour. And so he would just throw the biggest tantrum in the world whenever he went to school, because he knew that if he throws a massive tantrum, they'll take him home. And so please find out if there what it is that makes him antisocial in the school. Has he had a bad experience? Has he been bullied? Is there some environmental factor that he's afraid of? Antisocial behavior, when we talk about it, is anger, and anger is just fear exerted overtly externally. Fear and anger are pretty much the same thing. When we turn it internally, it becomes anxiety. When we push it out, it's called anger. So just find out what's going on with him.
Okay. I have a 26-year-old that has high functioning autism. We're having problems getting him to sleep through the night. He's on
Mhm.
3 different sleeping meds, none of it working. He watches a lot of TV. He loves his Disney movies. I have a lot of support. I go to a lot of training. I use them all. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Really looking for some ideas to get him to stop watching TV before bed and sleep through the night. Very frustrated. Lack of sleep is a trigger for his seizures. Somebody else wrote in and said screen time has been known to trigger seizures, so all the more reason. So anything we can help her 26-year-old, high functioning, uh, watching too much TV before bed.
Yep. So I'm not sure if it's watching TV before bed, or if it is the fact that he has access to TV and doesn't turn it off, and therefore that cuts into his sleep, or that there's something else interfering with his sleep. So I guess I would just, in general terms, I would say make sure that at a certain time, and he's 26, so let's be generous, and let's say at 11 o'clock at night, he should not have access to TV anywhere in the house. So I don't know how you're going to make that happen, but that includes computers, phones, everything. And then doesn't matter what he does in his room. Uh, get him habituated to the fact that there's not going to be any kind of TV or computer or anything from 11 o'clock or whenever you go to sleep, I guess. Maybe that's 10 o'clock, maybe it's midnight, whatever it is, for at least 7 hours, right? So, like until 7 o'clock in the morning. Just absolutely prevent access to that. Now, being 26, he might get very angry. He might initially lash out. That is called the extinction burst. So please be prepared for that, because in his world, in the past, it's possible that if he did exert anger and lash out at you, you gave in, or someone gave in. We tend to give in as people when our kids, have a meltdown. So make sure that that doesn't happen. Make sure that if he has a tantrum, he has a tantrum. It doesn't matter. You don't react to it. Please try to be safe. Maybe contain him to a certain environment where he can't hurt others. But he will get over it. I promise you that. And then the other thing, and then so once you've dealt with the issue of him learning that from 11 to 7 there's no TV, then you want to make sure that during the course of the day, there's a fair amount of TV. That's his reinforcer. So make sure he knows that, I don't know, every 3 hours he gets to do half an hour or an hour of TV, but give it to him at some interval during the day so that you're not fully depriving him. Because, what I always say, Shannon, is that when you remove a reinforcer, you have to make sure the rest of the day provides that access to that reinforcer uh, with some fairness, right? The environment needs to be fair, otherwise he just will react. So that's the first thing, is to make sure that TV access is just limited to certain hours of the day and certain times. And please don't let him scare you by tantruming. That's all. That's a very, very big lesson. The other thing is, let's look at once you've done that, let's see if he's sleeping. I mean, he could be having all kinds of other issues. You mentioned that it increases his seizure activity. It's very likely, if he's a seizure kid, it's possible that he's having subclinical seizures at night, which keep him up. Nothing to do with TV necessarily. These could be just happening, and subclinical means you can't really see them, but there's some form of seizure activity going on. Now, in order to find out about that, you will need to do what's called a 24-hour sleep EEG. It's an electroencephalogram. They do it at sleep clinics. And they will put like little electrodes and measure brain activity during the night. It's pretty important to get his seizures under control if they are happening at night. So that's one thing. There could be so many other things as well. For instance, a lot of our kids hear sounds that we don't hear because they have sensitive hearing. So make sure that there's not, like, let's say, a sprinkler going off in the background in the backyard that wakes him up, or the neighbor's dog barking, or whatever it is, could be also just waking him up. Make sure that he's not eating a lot of sugar during the day, which would interfere with his sleep. I mean, so there are people who are...
It's 27.
Caffeine. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. A 26-year-old could be taking in too much caffeine. Absolutely. And then when you've taken away all the things that could be contributing to him waking up, if he still needs some help, the most benign sort of supplement is melatonin. And we all produce melatonin, and sometimes we don't produce enough of it. By the way, one of the things that prevents the production of melatonin is light in the room. So make sure his room is extremely dark, because our bodies don't produce melatonin when there's light in the room, any kind of light. So make sure his room becomes dark at night as well. But you can always supplement melatonin. Shannon, my favorite is this melatonin called Tranquil Sleep. It comes in 3 milligrams and 6 milligrams. I usually just take a 3 milligram, and it helps me pretty significantly. So there are very kind of benign supplements that can help his sleep as well.
There we go. And for those of you who are trying to get your screens turned off and it's a battle with your kiddos, there are a couple of services, and I've heard every kind of thing from every parent about how to do it so that it doesn't look as though it's coming from you, which sort of puts a little bit of distance in the battle. There are some services that you can pay for, that you can set a timer, and electronics will get turned off, and there's a password that only you know to get it turned back on. I have known parents who go out and turn the circuit breaker off outside.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just so that, and it's on a timer, their phone goes off, they go and they flick the thing and they go, I don't know, the power's out. It's just not working. Right. Depending on the ability of your child or adult child to understand what's happening. We had for my son, it was the computer, and we had it set up on the parent controls that it turned off at a certain time. And unfortunately, that would mean that sometimes he would lose stuff in the middle of it, but then he started to plan because of it. But like the first couple of times, he was despondent, and then he just realized these are the new rules of the land. And, and we made sure that there was other reinforcing stuff to do when it went off. So, because I love when you say it needs to be fair. Thank you for being like that, Dr. Granpeesheh.
No, okay. Of course, but I also have to say that the majority of time, and we all as parents need to be honest with ourselves, the majority of time, these behaviors, these challenging behaviors, continue because we as parents are afraid of confronting it.
Yeah.
So, and I fully understand. He's a 26-year-old man, and it's could be scary. But so get support. If you need support, please get friends or family or people who can be there so that you are safe if he gets angry.
And she has said that they do have support. So there we
Right.
go. I want to say a bunch of hellos to people and love. There was a lot of love written in for skills. Somebody said they've really put everything into skills. I mean, everything in capital letters. And love, love, love skills. We're saying hello to a viewer in Latvia. And somebody says, I am an autistic person and I love live. And that's why we love to be live for you as often as we can be.
Thank you.
Yes. Also, a lot of people who are saying that they were hearing your children in the descriptions that you were giving, saying hello to so many people. Somebody wants to know, are there a lot of these young children, young ages 2 through 6 that get recovered?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the original study that we did at UCLA in 1987 was a research study where we had 3 groups of children. Each group had 9 or 10 children in it. And our children in the primary group, which we call the experimental group, was a group of children, and all these kids, by the way, were matched. What that means is that their level of functioning was pretty similar and their ages were very similar. So group 1, we did 40 hours per week of one-to-one therapy. Now, I want to clarify, that was just us, 40 hours, and then we had trained the parents, and the parents did, I think, somewhere close to another 15 hours. So in reality, it was about 55 hours a week. It was essentially, when you read that journal article, it says all waking hours. So it was from the time the child woke up to the time they slept, we had therapy. And we did that for almost 3 years. So that was group 1. And group 2 was a group of children also in our clinic, but they lived very far from UCLA. So we didn't have the ability to go there every single day. We didn't have therapists. Our therapists in those days were students at UCLA. And so we had provided them 10 hours a week because we could only go there twice a week. So that group received the same therapy we were doing, but only 10 hours. And then there was a third group who were kids in a different program at UCLA, on the other side of UCLA, in those days it was called the Neuropsychiatric Institute. Now it's called Semel Institute. And those children were receiving a behavioral program at NPI, Neuropsych, and it was different. It wasn't ABA, it was a different type of program. And so at the end of about 3 years, when we looked at these 3 groups, the group that had received our program at UCLA for 40 plus hours a week, half of those children had recovered. And I will define recovery in a minute. In the other 2 groups, 2% had recovered, which was basically 1 child. So the recovery in those days, the way that we defined it in that particular article, was normal IQ intelligence, which was tested through the Stanford Binet, which is an IQ test, and normal educational functioning. So these kids were placed in first grade and were functioning perfectly fine, normal first grade, no shadow or aid. And of course, about 11 years later, no, not 11, 7 years later, when the kids were an average age of about 11 to 13, one of our colleagues did a second study, and saw that all of the children except 1 had maintained that recovery status. They were functioning normally and were doing extremely well. And that 1 who had not was very close, but just had fallen behind in some areas. So it is possible. So that was roughly half. If I want to be, if I want to look at card data, I want to say that it's probably somewhere around 35, 40% of our kids have the potential to recover. The problem is that we no longer provide the level of intensity that we used to back in the day. So in the 70s and 80s, when we did these interventions, when I opened card, every single patient in 1990, 91, 92, 93, 94, every single patient coming in who was young, who was, let's say, 2, 3, 4, or 5 years old, would receive a 40-hour program, because the goal was always to give them the biggest chance at recovery, right? And that meant we have to do some intensive work and see how they do. After several years, insurance funding came in. And when insurance funding came in, or school district funding, it became much, much harder to do 40 hours or 45, 50 hours because nobody wanted to pay for it. And people started to think of ABA. The more ABA became commonly known, people started to think of ABA as speech therapy. It's not. ABA is meant to be intensive. And if you don't do intensive ABA, you're going to get less of an effect. And that has always just been my biggest concern, because any of the parents who are on skills will know that there's thousands, literally thousands of things to teach a child who's fallen behind already. I mean, it's beyond the number of hours of time we have. So you need a lot of time. You need the intensity to try to teach the child everything they need to function at a normal level. And unfortunately, Shannon, we have about, I think 5,000 or 6,000 kids active at CARD right now, patients, and the average number of therapy hours they receive is, I think, 16 a week, 1-6. And that's just sad, but it is also very, very difficult. Payers push back, commercial payers, insurance companies don't want to fund 40 hours. A lot of parents don't make their child available for 40 hours because a lot of parents don't know that it is possible for their children to do better with more hours. And then I'll just stop by saying the last thing is that a few years ago, I'm not sure when, maybe 10 years ago, we published a study showing many of our kids who had recovered at CARD. We showed their pre and post, both IQ and adaptive skills, and how they had progressed. And then we also did a bigger, much, much larger study where we showed that every single hour of therapy that you add will add to the acquisition rate and amount of the child. That means, it makes sense, right? If you tutor someone in English for 1 hour a week, they're going to learn just so much. If you tutor them for 5 hours, they're going to learn more. And so that's why I always refer to ABA as like a different language, because the more you do, the better the child's going to do.
And I just want to say, what I see a lot of times is that insurance companies will give a high prescription number when you first start, and parents, yes, because they don't know better, will say, well, we'll just take 20 hours right now, and later down the line, we'll think about 40. It's use it or lose it, folks. If whatever prescription you get, you fight for that and you do those hours, whatever it takes. It won't be the rest of your life, but it will change the rest of your lives. And I know that firsthand. Fight for it. Rearrange your lives. It's just like getting a kid ready for the Olympics. Say, we're going to take this amount of time, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is, and we're going to prioritize this. You will never be sorry. I live every day in the gratitude of knowing that we were able to do that and our lives changed as a result. And you want to get to where I am. Trust me. Everybody doesn't get in the same place, but I know that my stomach lining does not have to argue, oh, what if we'd only? I don't have to think of that, because we did it when we had it. Some of you have the insurance and you're not using the full prescription. No excuses is what I like. Put a thing on your wall. No excuses. We use the full prescription. And yell at me and say it's hard. I'll hold your hand. I'll cry with you. But in the end, you'll go, thank goodness we did that. We have to let Dr. Granpeesheh go because it's 11:01. I'm going to answer a question, an OT question, but I'm going to let you go, Dr. Granpeesheh. I'll see you later on today at orientation.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye-bye. Also want to say, somebody said, my child, a couple of months ago, my child started ABA. I love it. So much progress already. But somebody wrote in and said, I'm loving all the activities in Pinterest. I'm working with fine motor skills for my son. He's having trouble grabbing a crayon. What else can I do to help him? I just want to point out that there's different grasps. So when children start out, they start ham-fisted with a big crayon. That's okay. They start there and they get the motion of coloring, and make sure you reinforce coloring, right? Then we want for them to develop a pincer grasp. So because they have to have these muscles before they can move on to the tripod grasp. So if your child is not doing the ham-fisted grasp yet, one of the things that we find works with a lot of kids to get them excited, you can do this with small babies. You lay them on the bed, you do tickles, you play games, whatever, so that they're engaging with you. And then you hold out your fingers for them to grab, and you make them sit up holding on to your fingers, right? And then you tickle them, reward them, and they will do this for hours. It builds up their core muscles, which will help with handwriting later on, but it also builds up that grasp, the ham-fisted grasp, right? And you get the big crayons for that for the little kids. Then you start putting even, little kids on as soon as they're past the choking hazard stage, you put either Cheerios. Cheerios are good because they're harder to choke on, they melt. They're gluten-free O's that they make too. If you're gluten-free, you put them on their high chair table or on the table, and they pick them up. And that develops the pincer grasp, right? And they like it because they're eating. Later, you can do raisins or grapes or whatever, but they have to pick them up like that, okay? And that develops that skill. But then later, you need to get to the tripod grasp. So there's a couple, and that's how we want to get them to be doing crayons later on. And a lot of kids will go back to the ham-fisted with crayons. So what we do is we break the crayons. We also peel them so that it doesn't have the paper, and we break them so that they're half crayons. They can't ham-fist them, and you get the regular size crayons then. So they will begin to develop a tripod grasp that's not going to be perfect. Don't sweat it. And then when they're a little bit older, there are all kinds of OT things. I was featuring one when we left the studio. I left it there. They make these little things that help you to be able to hold a pencil in the tripod grasp. But actually, they're like little rubber things. Sometimes they have characters on them. So look on any OT site to help yourself to be able to do that. But the main thing is we want to make it reinforcing, right? It has to be fun, because who wants to do anything that's not fun, especially when you're a kid? Make it fun. Somebody else said, what age does intensive ABA stop working if we're not prioritizing academics? I want you to know that ABA never stops working. ABA across the world is considered the #1 teaching strategy to teach anything to anyone. They use ABA techniques with Olympic athletes. Do you know that the world of ABA is now half autism and half like everything else, corporate athletes, everything else? And that's only in recent years that it's half autism, because ABA works on all individuals. It just also happens to be very effective with individuals on the autism spectrum. If you're asking, like, at what age do you stop trying to catch them up on everything? By the time somebody is 8, you have to start making a determination of, are we going to try to teach them everything, or are we going to target what's important? And somewhere between the ages of 8 and 12, you start going, let's target it to this individual. Before that, you're teaching the broad range, trying to catch them up on everything. So hopefully that answers. And I love, somebody said, you are your child's best therapist. And that's the truth. Learn what you can. What a wonderful thing. Make sure that you're talking to the IBT people if you want to learn more about how to do that. Let me give that phone number one more time. 877-975-4559. Y'all, it's been such a privilege being here with you today. We want to thank Dr. Granpeesheh again. We're back tomorrow live. Those of you who are in the know that we're doing our live shows just in the month of August because mama needs a slight break and I got to get this kid ready for his distance learning, right? Senior year. So Tuesdays, we're doing reruns of Temple Grandin for the month of August. And on Fridays, we're doing reruns of Let's Talk Autism. But Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we are live. Tomorrow, we have Anne-Laure Davin with us. She is the wonderful self-advocate who has written the book Being Seen. She was diagnosed late in life. She is now, has studied, she does Zen meditation, and she teaches meditation to individuals on the spectrum and is opening up her free online meditation now for caregivers. And she's lovely. Oh my gosh, she's lovely. And she says that meditation has helped her with her sensory issues to be able to be centered enough that she can now withstand a lot more sensory in her life and do the things that she wants to do and is happy and joyous. And I think has an important message for all of us who are caregivers, but also for those of you who are on the spectrum who are watching. Something that is non-medication that can help with a lot of different things. It's really fantastic. That's tomorrow, along with the jargon of the day and other things. So until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. Thanks, you guys.